Halstead Telephone Company and R&J Broadcasting Incorporated is proud to present to you this broadcast on yourliveevent.com.
And welcome to today's broadcast of our Ada-Borup-West Veterans Day program here on your live event in KRJB 106.5 FM. Just about ready to be underway. And again, this program is presented by Ada VFW Post 7557 and the Ada American Legion Post 27. About ready to get underway here, as we should be ready to get started any second now. Just waiting for the final approval to get this underway.
Everyone to please silence your cell phones.
As we will send it now to the main stage.
Good morning and welcome to the Ada-Borup-West High School 2025 Veterans Day program. My name is Cadence Thome. I am a senior at Ada-Borup-West High School and the senior class president. I am honored to have been given the opportunity to speak at our Veterans Day program today. Veterans Day was originally established by President Woodrow Wilson in 1919 as Armistice Day. November 11th was selected in honor of that date in 1918, in which the armistice was signed, ending World War. We have gathered here to remember and honor all those men and women who served and are serving our country in the armed forces. At this time, I would like all those in attendance that have served to please rise. Let's give these men and women a big round of applause to thank them for our service to our country. You may be seated. During the presentation of colors, all persons present should face the flag, stand at attention, and salute. Those present in uniform should render the military salute. When not in uniform, men should remove the headdress with the right hand and hold it at the left shoulder, the hand being over the heart. Women should salute by placing the right hand over the heart. Non-citizens should stand at attention. The salute to the flag in a moving column is rendered at the moment the flag passes. We will now have the presentation of the colors by the American Veterans Honor Guard. Please rise. The Ada-Borup-West Senior High Choir, under the direction of Tanya Kemper, will now sing the national anthem. Please remain standing with your hand over your heart.
And bright stars through the perilous fight.
Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would like to call upon Pastor Phil Blum for the invocation. Please bow your heads and remain silent.
I'd like to share a prayer that has been part of my life, my service, and I hope it might be part for you. Lord, with each new day I see, pour your wondrous light on me. Keep the peace you give to me deep within my memory. Lord, you've been a guiding light, a fortress in the frightening night. Bend me to your gracious will and send me to your hurting children. Lord, with each new day I see, pour your wondrous light on me. Amen.
You may be seated. At this time, Commander of the Veterans of Foreign War, Ted Onenson, will now give remarks.
Good morning. I'm Ted Amundsen. I'm the commander of the Ada VFW. Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW is composed of those men and women who served in the United States Armed Forces in a war, campaign, or expedition on foreign soil or in hostile waters. Today we celebrate Veterans Day. It is celebrated on the 11th day of November to celebrate the end of World War I, which ended at 11 o'clock on November 11th, 1918. 11/11/11. World War I ended in 1918, 107 years ago. World War II ended in 1945, 80 years ago. Fighting in the Korean War ended in 1953, 72 years ago. While the fighting ended, South and North Korea are still technically at war. The United States' involvement in Vietnam ended in 1973, 52 years ago. Desert Shield, Desert Storm ended in 1990, 34 years ago. 9/11 happened on September 11th, 2001, 24 years ago. Iraqi freedom from 2003 to 2011, 14 years ago. And the war in Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021 ended 4 years ago. Time is passing quickly. Today, there are no World War II veterans still alive in Norman County. When I was in school here in Ada, the Vietnam War was still going on. I remember watching it on TV every night. We had Memorial Day parades when the veterans would march through Ada. It was just thrilling to see hundreds of veterans in uniform, the ladies' auxiliaries from both the American Legion and the VFW in uniform marching the streets. It's one of my favorite memories growing up here. In addition to being a veteran and the commander of Ada's VFW, I'm also an amateur historian. I now speak to you as a historian. I love history. I read history as much as I can, and I'm a member of the Norman County Historical Society, whose job it is to save and preserve our history. I have been fortunate. I have talked to hundreds of veterans over the years. I have met 2 Medal of Honor recipients, and I've heard some magnificent stories. Now, for the couple questions, you don't have to raise your hand. I just want you to think. How many of you have a family member who is or was in the military? Do you know anything of their service? Have you ever talked to them about their time in service? My Uncle Floyd, who's also my godfather, was in the United States Navy in World War II. He rarely spoke of his service. Most veterans don't. He may have spoken to other veterans, but my family knew very little about what he did during World War II. In the year 2000, before I left for a peacekeeping mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I paid him a visit. For 40 minutes, we sat in his kitchen and he told me his story. My Aunt Harriet listened in. She was in the kitchen washing dishes. I think she washed that same dish for 40 minutes. She later told me that Uncle Floyd told me more in 40 minutes than he told her in 50 years. I immediately ran to my mother's house and wrote down as much as I could remember. While I was in Bosnia, I did some research on the ship that he was in. I wrote that down. When I came home, I went to visit Floyd again. I showed him what I had. He made some corrections, and he gave me some more information. He was able to expound on his original story. I added all this to my writing, and I've now saved the story for my family. It's right here. All my cousins, my brothers, my sister can have a copy. Our veterans are getting older. If we don't capture their stories will be lost to history. If you do talk to your relatives, ask them about their service, but be respectful. Ask innocent questions. If you know that they were in the service, start with, what branch of service were you in? Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, or Coast Guard? Ask them to tell you about basic training. That's when you're going to get some stories. Everybody that went through basic training has stories. Where did they train? What was their drill sergeant like? That's probably where you'll get some really good stories. What was your favorite part of being in the military, and what did you hate the most? After basic, where did they go? What did they do? If you get that far, they're going to take over telling you the story. You probably won't have to ask many questions other than follow-ups. But don't wait. I had another uncle, Uncle Glenn, who was also in World War II, who served aboard an aircraft carrier. I didn't know that until after he died. We lost that story. He was involved in one of the most important naval battles of World War II, and I know nothing of his service. I had an aunt, my Aunt Susie, who was a Rosie the Riveter. If you don't know what that is, please look it up. She worked in the Kaiser shipyards. Again, I didn't know that until after she died, and I read it in her obituary. Another story lost to history. I want to thank you for your attention. I hope you'll learn your family history. I hope you'll save your family history. Lastly, to paraphrase an old saying, if you can read, thank a teacher. If you can read what you want, thank a veteran. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anundson. We will now have remarks by the Commander of the American Legion, Ken Pasternak.
Good morning. I'm Ken Pasternak, Commander of the American Legion, Post 26 here in Ada, Minnesota. Americans never forget.
This is what Veterans Day is really about. We remember the brave, the honorable men and women who have served our armed forces since the founding fathers created this nation. While not all veterans see combat, an expressed willingness to sacrifice one's life is a requirement. It has been part of the commitment of a military service since George Washington commanded his first troops. And it is not the only commitment to serve that our veterans make. Only 6% of American adults have served in the military. It is a small and talented group that enables our communities to function. Chances are that if you survey the local police force, your fire department, you would find a disproportionately high percentage of their members are veterans. When the emergency hits, there is a good chance that a veteran who is first will be the responder first. In most American communities, July 4th, 2025 was a day of celebration. But for Central Texas, this was a day of horror. Flash floods raged through Kirk County and killed 138, many young girls attending summer camp. The death toll could have been more than double had it not been for an extraordinary action of a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, Scott Reskin, and his crew. The 26-year-old New Jersey native led a search and triage operation in Camp Mystic, and is credited for rescuing 169 distressed victims. Rescue actions were personally recognized by the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Secretary of Homeland Security. He responded with modesty that is so common among U.S. veterans. I quote, "I'm just doing a job. This is what I signed up for." I think that any single Coast Guard pilot or flight mechanic or whoever it may be would have done this exact same thing in this situation. We just happen to be the crew that got the case, unquote. Whether it's hurricane relief, defending our interests abroad, search and rescue, America is fortunate to have people willing to volunteer and risk their lives for us. When veterans leave the military, he or she is likely to be a key contributor to your community. It may be a school teacher, a construction worker, or a first responder. They may be a business owner, a real estate agent, or a medical professional. Regardless of occupation, the veteran take their mission seriously. When they vote, vote is a higher percentage of non-veterans. They are more likely to volunteer in their communities, and they are less likely to live in poverty. In short, the veterans make our neighborhoods better. By virtue of our attendance here today, you have shown the appreciation for veterans. The people here are veterans, friends of veterans, families of veterans, co-workers of veterans, and neighbors of veterans. It is up to us to ensure that every veteran feels that his and her service to a country is appreciated by the fellow Americans. Warriors need advocates, and that is why the American Legion exists. We are here to serve veterans, their families, and communities. Veterans need each other, but more importantly, our country needs veterans. You cannot fight a war without veterans and service folks. While the idea of society without conflict is appealing, Let us not forget the wars have liberated slaves, stopped genocide, and toppled terrorists. Memories of wars, the sacrifices they made, and difficulties transitioned to civilian life in society have taken their toll on many of the veterans. And we should remember those that have difficulties and visit with them. There is no better way to thank a veteran than their service, to let them know, let him and her know that we got their back. After all, veterans have had America's back for 250 years, humbly and proudly keeping our nation free no matter the danger. Just doing their job, as the Coast Guard rescue swimmer mentioned in 2025, alike would say with the same measure of modesty. Thank you, God bless America, and God bless the veterans. And at this time, I would like to honor a veteran, a certificate of continuous membership, and I'll read the certificate. Certificate of continuous membership issued in grateful appreciation for faithful and dedicated allegiance to the ideals of American Legion. Be it known that Delmer Benish, a long time and dedicated member of American Legion, Post 26, Department of Minnesota, had certified to have been a good standing continuous member for 60 years. And be it further known that such record of consistent loyalty and American Legion merits the honor of being cited as an outstanding and contributor to the program of American Legion. In witness thereof, this testimony of personal gratitude is given under the hand of the National Commander and duly assisted by the National Adjutant and myself as Commander of Post 26 here in Ada. And we would like to present this certificate to the family, and Sandra is here today to receive their certificate.
Thank you, Mr. Pasternak. The Ada-Borup-West High School Choir will now perform How Do You Tell a Veteran Thank You? Wonderful job to our choir. At this time, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Pastor Phil Blum. Pastor Blum was a chaplain for the U.S. Marine Corps, holding the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. He was given the name of the disaster pastor. He got the name from the 1997 flood and fire in the Red River Valley, including Ada, and the U-2 spy plane crash at Beale Air Force Base. Following 9/11, he was called to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. as the Crisis Action Team chaplain. Following Hurricane Katrina, he traveled to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. He went for 2 weeks and stayed for 2 years. Blum kept volunteering for the Grand Forks Air Force Base, even in the dead of winter. He volunteered as the chaplain for the next of kin, believing that the cross needs to be in the crisis and especially for the families. He commissioned the chaplain for Special Forces and provided oversight of 120 chaplains and 99 chaplain assistants in over 20 countries. After retirement, he voluntarily went on his own to Ukraine, bringing 8 65-pound bag of needed supplies, winter clothing for children, and emergency kits for the military, including much-needed tourniquets. He volunteers for the free medical care in Minnesota for Ukrainians needing limb replacements. He continues working with Water to Thrive, establishing wells in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda. Providing fresh water gives them what the Ada Water Tower says, alive and thriving. He most recently was with a group from Fertile, and they successfully built 8 wells for this project. Chaplain Blum continues to do whatever he can to be an instrument of peace and to bring good news in the midst of bad news in the news. Please welcome Chaplain Phil Blum.
I'm going to make an adjustment here, and while I do, I'm going to invite everybody to stand up for a second and stretch. You'll be sitting down in again a second, but I just let you do that. And while I'm adjusting the microphone, it reminds me once when I was adjusting a microphone going, hey, you know, there's something wrong with this thing. And they said, and also with you. I'm really delighted to be here. This is a tremendous community. I really enjoy Ada. It is great. And I heard tell that you've got a pretty good volleyball team somewhere. Is that true? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, please be seated. Thank you for the very kind introduction. Did I do all that? I'm getting old. Let's see, I have a PowerPoint. This is, okay, where's the principle of the thing? Left side. Left side? Push up. Okay. This is a great principle, by the way. That's me once upon a time. Picture was taken about 14 years ago, and I tried as I best to get back into that uniform to show up today, and I decided it was not worth the risk. So I'm wearing another uniform that I used. As she said, I voluntarily said I would do next of kin notifications. Commanders do that, not chaplains, but I always wanted to make sure we accompanied them so that they would have the care that came with the community and the care from the chaplains. So this was my more gentle and friendly, rather than showing up in an official uniform. So I'm wearing it today. I'd like you to look at the uniform. By the way, it's hanging there. There's a lot of things on that uniform. There's only one that really matters. Can anybody guess what that is? Yeah, way back there. That's a good answer, actually, the uniform itself, but there's something on the uniform that's quite small. Yeah. There's a lot of medals there. There are. The one around my neck is a pretty big sized one. Yeah, what's the most important thing on there? The cross. It's not very plain, not very evident, but it's the cross. The cross is why I did what I did. And beyond everything else that's on that uniform, you can put it away. That's the reason. The cross needs to be in the crisis. And I didn't just invent that. It was actually said by a guy named George Washington, our first president. And he declared it in 1775. We weren't a nation. What year was the nation started? 1776. This 1775 created the chaplaincy. George Washington believed that that cross, that recognition of people's lives and the sacred trust had to be there with the military wherever they went, and to have enough chaplains so that the diversity was respected and that all would have the freedom of their faith being able to be expressed wherever they would serve. Well, that would continue to be true. When I was called to the Pentagon after 9/11, we had oversight and guidance for 120 chaplains, 99 chaplain assistants in over 20 countries. It was quite a deal to keep track of those folks, but make sure that they were there. Just as George Washington said they ought to be, we want to make sure that that's true. We want to continue to make sure that that's true. That's the reason. That's the cross in the crisis. At the Pentagon, I had a couple of opportunities that came my way that were quite telling. One was a guy that was there for the National Prayer Breakfast speak. He was the most valuable player in the NFL. He played for the Rams. Anybody know who that quarterback was? Hey, good job. There's a football player. Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner spoke at the White House, and then he came over to the Pentagon, and he had to be accompanied, and so I volunteered. And he and his wife, Brenda, and I were able to spend a good part of the day together, and I got to learn his story. Kurt Warner was drafted high on the list by the Green Bay Packers. You ever heard of them? Oh, groan. They cut him. As he would self-disclose, he was too arrogant. He was cocky. He was the guy that's going to come and lead, and he was going to be the quarterback, and he wasn't a team player. They let him go. Back to Iowa he went, and he worked at a grocery store. You ever heard of Hy-Vee? He lived with his mom and started working there. He invited a young woman by the name of Brenda to go out with him. She turned him down. During that time, he says, that's when I learned to be a leader, was by serving. I served people in that grocery store and in the community. When there was a flood, he was one of the key servants. He learned service. He went back to the NFL and became quarterback, and he won most valuable player. Learned how to be leader, a servant leader. He is the kind of person that indeed we try to do at the United States Air Force Academy. I had the privilege of teaching there for 7 years. Core values for leadership and service. Integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do. Integrity, it's somebody that you know you can count on, you can trust. It's the saying on the wall over here on your school, leadership, you can count on them doing what's right even if nobody's looking. Leadership, integrity. Service before self is so central. In the military, they have to learn that. You have to give away yourself in order to serve a greater cause. Service, leadership, service, and excellence. You can count on them to do their very best. United States Air Force Academy. I was also at the Pentagon when I learned about caring for everyone, regardless of their religious affiliation. The Pentagon has 5 stories. You only see a couple of them on the top of the land. Underneath, some of the biggest places, and that's where I was in a security place for the Crisis Action Team as chaplain. At 0630, that's 6:30 in the morning, by the way, 0630 the stars came out, and these weren't the stars outside. It was second lower in the meeting briefing room. And the commanders were there with the stars. At the end of the meeting, one of the commanders signaled to me to follow him. And I went over, and he went over by the copier machine, which faced the wall, away from this huge room filled with all kinds of military. Looking at the wall, he grabbed onto the copier machine, and visibly there was emotion. That doesn't happen for commanders. But he said, "Chaplain, I don't think I believe in God. I haven't been to church in so long. I don't know if I believe in any of it, but today I signed the command to send my only son into the harshest of the battle. And I would ask, please, would you pray for my son?" I said, "Absolutely." And I reached over and I took a hold of his arm and I said, "And I will pray for his father as well." That's some of the role of a chaplain, to be there regardless of that person's affiliation, to know that the dignity of every person is represented in that cross. We sent out 120 chaplains, 99 chaplains assistants in 20 countries, and then there came special forces. Some of you know about special forces. We wanted a chaplain to go with them. My buddy Don, I'll call him Don. Well, actually, that's his name. "I'll go." And I looked at Don and I kind of laughed and I said, "Don, you're so skinny you have to run around in a shower to get wet. You're going with special forces?" He went through survival training with me at the United States Air Force Academy, and then he ran 2 marathons. He showed I can go with special forces, and he did. We commissioned him a final worship service at his church where we had communion. Don was going to serve communion. The first ones that came was his family, then his daughter. 14, soon to be 15, she walked up to Dad and just collapsed in his arms and said, "Dad, you can't leave." So we whisked him off to the side so that he could be alone with his daughter. Imagine saying goodbye to your dad. You will not have any track of him for a year. You won't know where he is. Camp X, Camp Y, Camp Z. But he'll go, and we'll pray for him. She loved her daddy. She didn't want him gone when she turned 15. But he went and faithfully served and came back, thankfully. That's the military chaplaincy, that's dedicated to serving those in need and being there in the time of crisis, whatever that might be. That was at the Pentagon. I learned some of this the hard way. I learned most of my lessons in life the hard way. Anybody learn this? I don't learn in academics. I learned about the hard way. Well, the hard way started in Grand Forks, North Dakota, 1997. Everybody recognize Grand Forks? Looks a little different. The fire and flood of 97. My home was flooded, my parents' home was flooded, my sister's home was flooded, my wife's school was flooded, my other sister's home was flooded, our church was flooded, and 85% of our congregation was flooded. I was overwhelmed. I did not know what to do. It's called flood brain, sometimes PTSD. You're just paralyzed. You're just shocked. And you don't know which one up. Insurance companies call these kind of disasters acts of God. I completely disagree. The act of God is when the people of God show up with their helping hands. There's the acts of God. When people come and care enough to be there and to care and do. Kevin Walleman of ABC News did a special feature just out of East Grand Forks not long ago of a farmer who was so ill he was not able to harvest. And neighbors showed up, and Kevin Walleman was there, and he said he had 95 lined up, ready to go and do the harvest for them. There's so many they had to turn some of them away. That's God's hands. That's what makes a community like here alive and thriving because of that kind of neighborliness and that kind of care that takes place right here. Well, it came to me in Grand Forks, North Dakota. One of the guys that brought it to me was a guy named, I'll call him Richard. Yeah, that's his name. Where is the line, the defensive line of the football team? The big guys. Where's the, stand up. Where are you guys? Come on, these are the biggest guys in the whole team. There's one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Who's the biggest guy of the group? Is that you? Maybe? Yeah. How big are you? You're 6 foot, 200 and... Well, my buddy Richard played defensive line for the University of Minnesota Gophers. He's a big guy, 6'5", 275. I played racquetball with him in that small little court. I did real well until I ran into him. Or worse, if he ran into me. Dick Swanson, he came to Grand Forks for part of the recovery. I didn't know he was coming. By the way, do you realize that there was a lifetime when no cell phones were there? I'd never had a cell phone. I was in my mid-40s. Still don't know how to run this thing, what's called a smartphone. Smartphone, dumb guy. Dick shows up. I said, oh man, do we need you. I have got so much of the mucking out to do, and I got to have a lot of muscle. Boy, am I glad you're here, Dick. And he said, Phil, we brought flowers and shrubs. And that's what we're going to do. Dick, I need you. I need your big, bulky muscles. Come on. No, you need this. You need to realize that it's May and there's no spring after the flood. There isn't any buds. There isn't any flowers. You need this. And so he did. He planted, and I was blessed with the spiritual well-being that he brought. We all need it, and God brought it through him and restored hope. Restored hope in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and helped us to know that we have a place from our Creator. I got a wonderful book while I've been here in Ada. High school kid. His name is Winston. He writes about the gift of creation and the fact that there's a place for you. And that's true. There's a place for you. It's a beautiful book. Is that heaven's calling? Here's Grand Forks, North Dakota. Recognize downtown? That's what it was like. 13 buildings burned down in the middle of town, besides flooding. There was so much water they couldn't get the fire trucks down there. They put them on top of military vehicles and drove in and tried to fight it, but they never were able to. Let's see, I thought I had the one with the rainbow. Nope. Nope. The rainbow of hope. You're really good technology. You're the one that did this. It's really good. But that one I missed. From Grand Forks came Hurricane Katrina. I prayed, Lord, you know, I want to always remember how grateful I am for the way that your hands came with others that came to help. Help me never forget that. Well, be careful what you pray for, because came Katrina that hit, and I said I'd be grateful, so I went. Where there's no brains, there's no fear. I went to Keesler Air Force Base because the chaplain there, his wife had cancer, and the hospital was flooded, and they had to get out. So I took over. Went for 2 weeks and stayed for 2 years. The people that were evacuated out of Katrina were just coming home, trying to figure out what to do and put themselves in place, and they called me up and said, "Hey, Phil, there's this group of 60 coming from up north. They're here to help. What in the world do we do with them, and where are they coming from?" And I said, "Let me guess. Concordia College in the Red River Valley." And they said, "How'd you know?" Because I know those people. And I know what they care about, and I know who they follow, and how they regard their neighbor. And they're here to help. Well, what do we do with them? Ken, the guy that we got for construction, was the guy that really understood how to guide and where to go. And he calls me up and he said, "We got this group of 60, Phil, but half of them are girls. What do I do with them?" I said, "Ken, they're northern girls. You just point them to the big need and watch out and get out of the way." He called back the next day and he said, "You send all those girls that you can find. They outwork the guys." It was some fun moments, but it was deeply meaningful to watch, to see what took place. In the two things, though, Katrina. One was the National Youth Gathering for the Lutheran Church that took place. 36,000 kids, teenagers, came down to New Orleans. I worked very closely with the police, and they were panicked. 36,000 teenagers showing up in our city? Are you kidding? What kind of chaos is this going to bring? 36,000 transported by a guy from Grand Forks named Leon, out, and they did service work all over the city. They repaired cemeteries, they put together playgrounds, they took care of daycare. They made a transforming impact across the entire city. The mayor came to their assembly in the Superdome, stood in front of them, and he said, "You know, when Katrina hit, it seemed as though the devil and all the powers of evil did their very worst to us. Today, God has sent God's angels, and God has brought the very best to us." Oh, I flipped ahead. I'll get there. God has sent his rainbow. All the kids had colorful shirts on in the assembly. That's what he said about those youth that came down there. Now I'll tell you this story, and then I'll move to Water to Thrive. Wild Rose, North Dakota. Anybody know where Wild Rose is? You go just a little further, you're either in Montana or Canada. I was born there. Grace Lutheran Church. They came down to Katrina to help out. And people would ask, "What in the world will these people coming from all the way?" I said, "It takes a whole day to drive out of North Dakota. They're so far away." "Do they come down here because they love jazz? We're trying to restore the city of jazz." I said, no. They have two kinds of music, country and Western. And they're here not because they love jazz, they're here because they love Jesus. And they know that Jesus wants them to love their neighbor, and they're here for that reason. They came and they worked, and they One had one condition: don't try to service any of that jambalaya stuff. They now have jambalaya dinners over in Grace Lutheran and Wild Rose. When I was there, I showed them a little village, Chalmette. The school was completely underwater, lost everything, including the library. Wild Rose went back home. They did a fundraiser because the school was going to close in Divide County. And they put together a fundraiser that brought their entire library down to me to give to that school. And here's the newspaper where I'm sitting reading books, sitting on the gym floor. Wonderful. That's being the kind of neighbor. I'm going to skip. It's really hard to skip Ukraine. That's so deeply meaningful. Very quickly. If you want to understand Ukraine, think of the Red River Valley. You can think of the Red River Valley, richest farmland in the world. The Dnipro River flows through Ukraine, just as rich as the Red River Valley. You think what's at stake? Think the Red River Valley. Think of Canadian boundary, think of that as Russia. That's how close this all is. I was there. This guy that's down below, you can see I'm wearing my shirt, the clerical shirt over there. They designed that for me so I could go out to be with the troops. None of their bases are still existing because they've been blown away. They're out in the woods. We sent them foot warmers during the winter to keep them warm. There I am with the troops, and then this guy is the most impressive kid. That's the commander training them how to take out tanks. And he's on his cell phone, and that's a picture of his dad, who's on the front line. They're both farmers. They came back to try to do their crops, and all their crops were mined, and they couldn't take out the harvest. I went with 8 65-pound bags of goods for winter clothing for children, tourniquets, and medical supplies for the military. I went over, and there's this shelter. This little girl was scared to death of me. She's scared of everything. She had to flee her home with her grandma. Don't know where mom and dad are. I gave her a winter coat from Minnesota. She put it on and said, "Thank you very much." And I said, "Bless you." One of the greatest part of my trip. By the way, this one over here, this is the favorite t-shirt of this guy. It's a Ukraine farmer pulling out a Russian tank out of his field. They really love that one. There she is. She's received her coat. Whoop, what did I just do? I'm going to do one more thing. This is where I'm currently working on Water to Thrive. Wells in Ethiopia, Tanzania. Way over on the side here, see these 3 little girls? They were sick every day of their life. 85% of illnesses are waterborne, just simply bad water. Give them fresh water, it transforms lives. This is them when they reached the middle school age. They had fresh water, and now she's in medical school, she's in law school, she's in medical school. Here they are, beautiful young women. When you give a well, you get a GPS coordinate so you know exactly where it is, and you get a plaque that identifies that's the well that you gave. This plaque, you can't quite read it, but it's from United in Christ, Fertile, Minnesota. Ever heard of Fertile? They did 8 wells in Fertile. Alexandria did 1 well, Breckenridge did 1 well, Wahpeton did a well, Kennedy, Minnesota is halfway to their well. Cormorant did 3 wells. I just wonder if maybe Ada wants to do a well. I'll help you. But it's really a wonderful thing. And you get your name on the plaque, and so I have the feeling I went way over time, but I was told I could, because I had too many stories to tell. But I want to end on something that you are seeing at your school. You matter. I love that sign. If anything, that's what the cross symbolizes, that you matter so much and that you are loved. I'd like to say to you what I've said to many in the troops, said to many in travels from Isaiah. This is the word for you. Please receive this. For thus says the Lord, the one who created you, the one who formed you, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I'll be with you, and through the rivers they shall not overwhelm you, for I am the Lord your God, your Savior. For you are precious in my eyes and honored, and I love you. Fear not, for I am always with you. And know that that's the truth for you, each and every one. Thank you for your time. We're going to have the honoring. You got it.
Thank you, Pastor Blum. That was amazing. At this time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Anundsen back to the stage.
Every Veterans Day, we present at least one quilt to a veteran. This year we have 3 quilts. We have 2 of the veterans here, and the last quilt will be presented in a separate ceremony. The first quilt will be given by the wannabe quilters to Mr. Bruce Benson, who entered the Army in April of 1969. He was wounded in Vietnam in June of 1970, and he was discharged in the spring of 1971. This is the quilt. The next quilt will be presented to Arnie Gunderson, who served in the United States Army in the 1960s. Yep. The third quilt, which we'll present to Tom Hansen at a later ceremony, the American Legion and VFW would like to thank the wannabe quilters for preparing these beautiful quilts.
Thank you, Mr. Anundson. The Ada-Borup-West High School Band, under the direction of Richard Tuttle, will now perform God Bless the USA. Thank you, Ada-Borup-West High School band members. On behalf of the Ada-Borup-West High School student body, I would like to thank everyone for joining this program to honor our veterans who have helped make this great country what it is today. Let's give another round of applause to our wonderful speakers and veterans. Thank you. I will now call upon Pastor Blum for the benediction.
Guess I got to get this out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, community, for being a thriving community of caring. I invite you to stand as I give you a benediction. It is my prayer and my promise to say to you, the cross of the Lord will go before you to guide you, behind you to encourage you, above you to watch over you, beneath you to support you, beside you to be your friend, and within you to fill you with his peace, his purpose, and promise. Amen. I want you to know my friend from Ethiopia, Bishop Melkamu. Turn around. Water to Thrive cap. We're doing wells together.
You may be seated. Wonderful job, Pastor Blum. We will now have the retirement of colors by the American Veterans Honor Guard. Please stand. Oh, oops. If any veteran in attendance has not received a letter from the Ada-Borup-West students, feel free to grab one from the table on the east side of the auditorium on your way out. All students are dismissed to your fourth period class. Thank you.
And that will conclude our broadcast of today's Ada-Borup-West Veterans Day program, presented by the Ada VFW Post 7557 and the Ada American Legion Post 26.